I went through Moore County, somebody slipped that underneath my windshield, apparently saw the Dow AgroSciences sign on my truck, and I sure hope that something like that doesn't happen over this way. You want to pass that around? And there's some people out there that got the wrong idea. But there's an outline or a checklist for you of some of the key takeaways I hope to cover today. And can you put those out?
Yeah.
I've brought a specimen label for all of you, and I've also, if anybody wants it afterwards, I've got a Q&A that Dow puts out relative to Pathway. And then I've also got a piece of paper here. You can list any information that you want from me. I'll be glad to get it. Just put your name and your email address, and I'll be glad to get it for you. I tried to get you t-shirts and hats. You've probably heard about Dow and DuPont combining right now, and as a result, there's not too much that's available from the company. But I was able to get you this, and I'll give it to Mr. Strong, and he can give it to the person who asked the best question. Okay.
Oh man, this is.
But I talked with all my buddies, and that was the best they could give me. So we're really hard up right now. So we really need you guys to go out and buy as much Pathway as you possibly can. So I think at this point, everybody's got a specimen label, and you got a list of what I think are the key takeaways about Pathway. And we can adjust that list based on some of the discussion we have as we go through this. But as I understand it, you guys are forestry technicians, and you're primarily focused up here in the Piedmont, obviously the Montgomery County area. I don't know if this is a picture of one of you guys or not, but found that out on the internet. And this is the kind of pine forest, loblolly, that you guys are dealing with most of the time. And one of the tools that you've got out there is our product called Pathway, which is a specialty herbicide. There's our sign up there. A couple of things that are big takeaways. One is signal words. On the label you can see it's clearly shown that this is a product you got to treat with caution. You want to keep it out of reach of children. And if you read further on, you'll see, obviously keep it out of the way of animals and birds and that kind of stuff. So RTU is a cut surface control for woody plants, approximately 20 plus. And we'll talk about an alternative to it that Jeff Tapley suggests for this area. And it's got a lot of soil activity, so that's kind of a watch out, kind of like wildland fire watch outs. That's one you're going to be real careful about with this particular product. As far as an agenda, I thought we'd cover, given the background of you guys, and not to waste your time, I was told to spend about 15 minutes. We can go longer than that, up to 30 if we need to. But as I understand, the key things that you'd like to know about are what are the benefits of this product, what are its uses, what's local experience, and I'll emphasize that because I think that's really important in the use of Pathway. And then I'll talk about safe use. Also, just so you're aware, it's not really shown on the label. It's on the SDS, and I can give you copies of that if you want. This is considered a flammable liquid because it's got isopropanol and ethylene glycol in it. Particularly the isopropanol is considered a flammable liquid, so you got to be concerned about it from that standpoint. If, as I go through this and I get done, if you want me to go over and talk about application and first aid and cost and some of those other items, I'll be glad to. I got slides on it, or I can send you that information later. But given the fact you're forest technicians in your second year, I figured you probably got what you need on that, but prepared to talk about it if you'd like.
Do you have another takeaways page printout?
Should be. Should have been plenty to go around the room.
All right, thank you.
Okay, got it?
Yep.
Good. Talk a little bit about active ingredients, and there's a couple of things on here that are important to recognize. First is that the mode of action on this, it mimics naturally occurring plant auxins and hormones, and it basically kills woody plants, etc., through uncontrolled and unsustainable plant growth. And it's kind of like what you studied about in different kinds of pesticides. Basically, it tricks the plant and tells it to grow as fast as it possibly can, and it can't do that. And I don't know, Mr. Strong, if you want to add to that a little bit, but at the end of the day, that's its mode of action, and that's how it works. Now remember, this is a cut surface herbicide, so you're a little limited on where you can use it. And again, remember about that soil activity. What's interesting is pathway and Tordon, and I think Tyler covered Tordon already, are basically very similar, particularly in the ready-to-use category. And it's probably, Tyler talked about the reason that there's a little bit of concern about Tordon and pathway that goes back in history is 2,4-D is what was used in Agent Orange. But what a lot of people don't know is this isn't the same old 2,4-D that we had back in the 60s and 70s. That had a lot of dioxin in it, and it's the dioxin that caused all the problems, or most of the problems, that you hear about with soldiers, Marines, and Air Force personnel. So keep that in mind. Then the other part of it is to recognize that if you increase the amount of pichlorum, as you do when you get to Tordon 22K, it becomes a restricted use type pesticide. And obviously the rules change, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about ready to use, and in that format, it's your normal pesticide that you can use and apply without all the same issues you have with restricted use pesticides. Okay? Benefits and uses. Again, this is used to control woody plants, and we'll just describe the list of those in just a minute. And let's assume that you've gone out and done your assessment, done your review of what's going on in the area that you want to apply herbicides. And with that in mind, you've decided that this is one of the ones you want to evaluate. What's interesting with pathway is it's primarily registered for site preparation. But as I talked to Mr. Strong about, it gets used in a wide variety of ways. And those two check marks, the second of the two is probably the way that you see a lot of use in this area by utility companies, DOT, and others, because they find it to be an effective way to deal with it. They don't have to necessarily deal with adjacent crops, don't have the environmental issues related to some of the things that you'd probably be concerned about. But it is registered for site prep, but it gets used in other ways in the forestry industry. Here's the list. You can also see this on your label that you've got. You can make the decision on whether that's the problems that you're dealing with in terms of your particular forest stand, and how you, or what problems or what issues you're having to deal with. I'm not real sure on how good that is relative here, and I'll give you an alternative that Jeff Tapley, local pesticide consultant, provided as we talked about some of his comments and things that he suggests. I won't go through this whole list. You can read it if you like. A lot of it's in the takeaways, but one of the first things I'll point out to you is down here at the very bottom is Jeff's comments about the soil activity of pathway, and that in his practice he typically recommends the use of Pathfinder 2 as an alternative that doesn't carry those problems. And I think, as you guys probably heard when that was presented to you recently, Pathway 2 has a much broader range of woody plants that it'll kill. I think the list is somewhere around 80, whereas the list that you've seen there for Pathway is less than 25. So from a perspective of giving you greater capability and not having a soil activity problem, Pathfinder 2 is probably a better option for you in this area. But back to Jeff's comments, the active ingredient is pichlorum, which is on that label that you've got. The product can be used any time of the year except when there's heavy sap flow, March through April, which I'm sure you've learned in your instruction. And the typical cost for Pathway, according to Jeff, if you buy it locally or through a local supplier, it's about $40 a gallon. Okay. As I said earlier, a reminder, the soil activity issue, it was even highlighted by one of our Dow AgroSciences specialists. Here's the alternative, just key benefits of it. I think you've already seen this, but if you got any questions, there it is. It controls more than 80 woody plant species, and the other part of it is you can use it year-round. It doesn't have the same limitations.
So
Yes.
what is the difference between the Pathway and Pathfinder 2? Like which one's more effective?
As far as effective, it depends on what your target is. So if all of your woody plants are on the list that you've got on that label, you're in good shape with Pathway. It's a little bit cheaper. It's about $25 per 2.5 gallons less than Pathway 2. Or Pathfinder 2. I don't know why we just named it that way because it gets kind of confusing. Pathfinder 2, the other part of it is year-round use and the fact that you got 80 plants. But there's a key takeaway to your question that I find, and that is talk to somebody local. You know, like Mr. Strong or Jeff Tapley or somebody else that's used these products and found how they work in their local area and what you might want to mix them, you know, as a combination relative to the various target plants that you've got in your area. Did that answer your question?
You look up there in the first sentence under that first bold thing where it says Garlon, that's your difference right there. You got two different active ingredients and you just have to learn by experience whether Garlon or Tordon based products. All this stuff is related back to those chemicals back in the day. You just have to know what works better on certain species just from experience. Okay?
Somebody do Garland and Tordon?
Garland?
I think Alistair's going to cover
You got
that.
Garland? Okay.
Yeah.
Garland 4.
This was
Which
their,
that gets
their answer. This was their answer to cut surface, whereas for Garlon, for the active ingredient Garlon and Pathway was the answer to a cut surface for Tordon. Okay.
Yep.
That's just the history of it.
Yep. A lot of similar
A lot
raw
safer, a lot safer here.
with this product. Yeah, everything I read. Do people use Pathway around here? That much? I mean,
There's a jug here or there.
okay.
And Fortune Suppliers got it in the catalog in there. They got Pathfinder and Pathway.
Well, it's available. I mean, there's no issue finding it.
On balance with you, I like Pathway better
Okay.
on a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Cause I like that soil activity, but that's gonna kill every damn thing in the ground around it.
Yep.
I can tell you that. Whereas Pathway-
Well, and that's where we get here with this last bullet I've got, relative if you're gonna plant conifers. That soil activity really creeps into the issue here if you're using it for site prep. But first, no more than 4 gallons per acre can be applied on a forest site. Again, this is contained in the label precautions. Various ways of applying it, but don't apply it more than 1 application per year. And if you do injection, do not apply more than 1 injection application a year as well. But I tell you, the biggest takeaway on this page is that last bullet. If your commercial trees that you're gonna plant are conifers, the issue with Pathway is you need to wait 6 months before you plant. That puts a few restrictions on you in terms of flexibility you'd otherwise have. Okay? These are the key takeaways, and I'll give you a list of a lot more, and those are important, but these are the 4 most critical that I see with Pathway. First, it's a cut surface use type product. 2, it's long-term control for woody plants. Long-term is the critical term there. It's soil active, which, you know, there's pluses and minuses with that, as you just heard from Mr. Strong. And lastly, the piece that I really find is helpful for everybody is talk to and listen to local users that got the history of these products, they've been around for a long time. What do they say, and how do they work in this particular environment with the humidity, the soil, and the climate conditions that you are dealing with. So unless you want more information, I'm gonna stop right there. I've got additional information if anybody's got a question or wants me to
Yes.
get into it.
Is Pathway or Pathfinder cheaper?
There's about a $25 difference on the books at the 2.5 gallon purchase level. So if you went out on the internet, you'll find about 20, that's from Dow Chemical, Dow AgroSciences, and one of our suppliers like forestry suppliers, etc. You may be able to find that cheaper through other suppliers. The question I can't really answer for you for this particular area is if you're, is that $25 worth paying relative to what Gargon will do for you in Pathfinder 2? That's a question you gotta answer yourself. From a Dow AgroSciences perspective, I don't really care if you buy our product or you buy somebody else's brew. We're producing most of the raw chemicals that go into it, so we make money either way. Okay? Yes?
Is it more dangerous or it spreads out on the ground horizontally or
It does.
vertically?
I think it's both. It leaches into part of this issue with soil activity is it stays active and it leaches through the ground. So as you'll read on that label, there's various crops that you do not want to plant it nearby. Obviously, you want to stay away from stream side management zones, things like that. But I think you'll find the information you need on that, the label. And there's also information there of who you can contact for more specific type information. Any other questions? Yes.
So best prices would probably be forestry suppliers, or is that what you?
That's one of the better suppliers. I don't know who you might have in this area, and I try not to tell you, point you in the direction of any particular supplier, because they're all customers of ours that we try to keep in business.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, thanks very much.